So,
what does the author says when it says Bharata story?
Which one?
Bharata.
He gives Bharata as an example of devotion. That means you have a heart now. Heart is, in the sense, your mind or feeling faculty. And Bharata's heart, he never allowed any other thought to contaminate his heart, except for thoughts of worship, devotion, and reverence for his brother. So he did not allow any other feeling to contaminate his heart, actually. So like suppose most of us now, we have feelings of, we want power, we want prestige, we want to have sensual pleasures, we want to become a scholar, we want to become a Pandit in spiritual literature, and then we want to look beautiful or whatever. I mean, we want to have social status. All these feelings will be there in majority of the people, but he did not allow those feelings to contaminate his heart. He only allowed feeling of worship and reverence towards his brother, actually. So that is the idea. He wants that if you want to regulate your mind and become a master of the mind, you have to be, your mind actually should merge in God, or that means your mind should be taken over totally by God, actually. So you no more exist. You will not know whether it is your thought or God's thought. It becomes one. And then only you have achieved yoga, and then only you achieved mastery of the mind. Your transcended mind, you are liberated from all suffering. So that is only possible if you train your mind for it to become quiet. We want what is called chitta vritti nirodha. That means we want that the mind should become completely tranquil. It will become tranquil only when the thought of the divine is present in the mind. And for it to be present continuously, you should continuously think about him. That continuous thinking is possible only when you have reverence and worshipful feeling towards the God, actually. So that is the example he wants all of us to keep in mind while practicing this Raj Yoga or meditation.
Is this Bharata means the same king, the king by which?
His Bharata is Dasharatha's son, Rama's younger brother. The same story.
Okay.
You see what happens. Rama and Sita and Lakshmana goes to the forest, and the whole, because Rama is loved by the entire population, they feel very depressed, and everybody, all the entire town goes to plead with him to come back and rule the kingdom and all that. And then Rama simply says, I will come back if Bharata asks me to come back. So then if all the people turn to Bharata, he says, now you tell him. The Bharata answers, he says, it is not my duty to command, I only obey. I am not a person to tell Rama to come and occupy the throne. I am nobody to tell. I am his slave. I'll follow. I'm not the person to command him. So that is the mindset which is required to succeed in yoga, because finally all our efforts will lead us to the development of self-surrender. Then only the ego will get dissolved. As long as ego is there, it is like a poison running in your system, which will never allow you some happiness at all. So that is only possible when self-surrender happens. And self-surrender, for self-surrender to happen, you require love and devotion. So these are the methods by which we train our mind to get out of the constricted sphere in which it is trapped in the name of name and fame. Name is actually constricting, or you say it is a cage in which our consciousness is trapped, actually, name as well as the physical body. So as long as name and form are there, you can never have freedom. And that freedom is only possible when you transcend your name and form. And that is only possible, all these are interrelated. So final aim of any person who is doing yoga or any person who is doing meditation or self-realization is to develop a state of self-surrender. So Bharata is an example of that self-surrender, actually. So as you meditate, you will understand, you will come to a stage where you realize that it is difficult to control your mind. Only God has the power to control your mind. And then you hand over your case to God. He says, you only can, you're the only power in God to bring me up to that stage. That means making the mind disciplined. So that stage will come with your own experience, actually.
Yeah.
Can I know what is the difference between self-surrender and simply surrender?
What is this? What is the question, Maharaj?
What is the difference between self-surrender and when we only say surrender or surrender to the God, and self-surrender? What is the difference?
You try to answer, you tell me, what do you think it is? What is your understanding of that?
Self-surrender means getting ourselves purest as far as possible.
No,
Or free from ego and all.
So you feel that free from ego is self-surrender. So what is the other question you raised? What is the difference? You're thinking about that?
No, surrender to the God or surrender to the master. How it is different from self-surrender?
No, that's what I am asking you to tell me what you feel about it. What is your understanding about these 2 points you're raising? What is the difference you find? If you enlighten me, I will know.
Yes. Okay. I feel that self-surrender is the first prerequisite before we surrender to the God.
Okay. Okay. I agree. We agree with that. What is the next point?
No. Sometimes we, in the literature, we find self-surrender word is there, and sometimes only surrender is there.
So you've given surrender. What is so what is the point you want to understand? Because what your self-surrender is, we all agree that is the understanding, common understanding, which is absolutely right.
Specifically, we find those 2 words differently mentioned. So I just wanted to know whether
surrender
there is
can
any...
be. You see, now politically have surrendered. The Indian have surrendered to Britain. Some prisoners have surrendered to Ukraine people. So surrender in what context? So several contexts are there, no? So you suppose your house, your mortgage to a bank to get some loan, and then you surrender your mortgage, and then you get out of bankruptcy. Surrender means that. So self-surrender. So I didn't understand your question at all. Because your understanding of self-surrender is correct. Your self-surrender is you want to see that you are liberated from your ego. So the feeling of self, that you are the agency who is doing the work, that the agency you are putting this question. We have a very powerful intuitional feeling that you are the agent who are taking, you have a free will, and then you are responsible for the actions you are doing. That is called the kartutva bhava. So when you use the word self-surrender, this kartutva bhava is gone. So that is called self-surrender, which you have mentioned is correct only. But the other part of the question I didn't understand. When self is gone, there is the idea of surrender also is meaningless, actually.
In the spiritual context only, in our literature also we find surrender only is mentioned, and sometimes self-surrender also is mentioned. So why?
Both mean the same
Things.
thing, actually. Both mean the same thing, actually.
Okay,
Both,
sir. Thank you.
The way you are putting the question, it may mean the same thing only. Yeah. Because when we use the word surrender in a spiritual context, we are talking of surrendering our, you can take your manasu, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, and then the physical body, and then the karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, all of it we are surrendering. Sarva bhavena bharata. That means all your feelings and emotions you are surrendering. So that is the thing.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thanks.
Okay, so I do not ask you to detach yourself from the world, but only to attend to everything with a conscious idea of the divine, a poet's view. If a person develops that state of mind, he is constantly in a state of prayer, which implies he has realized his own serfdom and the Lord's mastership and has established a permanent link of devotion. Everyone can attain this state, but only after sufficient practice. He who acquires it abides in the state of supplication permanently. He is at liberty to put up humbly before the Master anything he likes. Everyone has to assume that state at the time of prayer. Then alone is the prayer accepted. This is the relationship of love, which, having been established in the sphere of self, extends up to that of the Master. This is the link which, once established, is never severed. But still the final destination is far off, though the power of thought, which is enormously great, makes it easily accessible. Remembrance brings a lover close to the beloved. There is no limit to this closeness. The greater the love or affinity, the more does one advance towards him. This relationship comes to us by inheritance. So I just repeat this. This relationship comes to us by inheritance. Now it is up to us to develop it as far as to secure utmost nearness to him. The state of prayer is that of a devotee, and it is strengthened by love. This constitutes the first step in the ladder, which helps us to climb up to the ultimate. All stages or states of spiritual advancement are within it. No particular time is fixed for the prayer. One can do it when he feels inclined to it, or else he should try to create a disposition for it when required. One should always pray to him alone, who is the Master in the true sense. I do not think it proper to pray to the slaves, that is, to those powers which are subordinate to man and which are potentialized by him. The ravages of time have now reduced them to a consumptive state. It is also sheer folly to pray to the great master for worldly gains, except in most special cases. Of course, it is right to pray to the master for that which is ordained. This comes under the rule of true etiquette and signifies our acceptance of him as the master, entrusting to him our entire self.
Sir, the relationship comes to us by inheritance meant what it meant.
మన క్షోభ నుంచి వచ్చాం కదా, so we are
Oh,
born out of
clear,
God.
clear.
So automatically, like
It comes.
you're born in this world because of genetic contribution from your mother and father. So you're existing on this earth because of the contribution from that Shobh, no? So you're inherited your entire being from God only.
Right. Thank you.
So now, for the form of prayer which may ensure the greatest good to everyone, I may say that one should be brought to the same state of mind which is usually developed at the time of prayer. The feeling that he, as a true servant, approaches the great master in the humble capacity of an insignificant beggar must be engrossed upon his mind. He may put up everything before his master, resigning himself completely to his will. In other words, he may assume his real form after surrendering everything to the master. He should withdraw himself from all sides and turn completely towards him, losing all worldly charms. The remembrance of everything should merge into the remembrance of one, the ultimate, resounding all through in every particular of his being. This may be known as complete annihilation of self. If one develops in this state, in my view, he should be considered as an embodiment of prayer. Every thought of his will be synonymous with that of the master. He will never turn towards anything that is against the divine will. His mind will always be directed towards that which is the master's command. People should be exhorted to offer such a type of prayer. If one achieves and settles down in it, what else remains for him to do except remembrance, and that too such a one as never comes in consciousness even. Even great saints remain thirsting for it without even getting up to its brink. They remain longing for it forever. It is not an ordinary thing. One will be struck with wonder if he grasps its real significance. There is extreme simplicity, and in spite of the vibrations in it, there is perfect calmness, which can hardly be termed as such. And to say nothing of emotional excitations. If we call it light, it may not be correct. Similarly, darkness may not be an appropriate expression for it. It is a state which none may perhaps like to appreciate. It is, in fact, the end of everything. All stages finish at this point. It is the absolute reality, the source of everything, the ultimate mark, which we have finally to arrive at. What beyond? May the Lord bestow upon you all an opportunity to be blessed with its realization. Amen. Before creation, perfect calmness prevailed all over. When it descended, it brought with it the real essence. The condition of both was nearly the same. Wheels after wheels began to set in, and we ourselves were the doers. The waves of the current raised a huge sea. Numerous drops joined together to form a river. The origin was the same drop, the essence, which came down with it. The basis of the river was nothing but a few drops of water, which trickled down from a mountain crevice and flowed down in the form of a river. In other words, the unnecessary additional drops mingled with it, enclosing the real essence all over and giving it an assumed form, which was thicker and grosser. Now, generally, the grosser form of a thing alone is open to view. By constant observation, its grosser form melts away after some time, and only an imaginary form remains in its place. This too, by constant endeavor, disappears from sight. Finally, all things which had swelled up the original point will be lost sight of. This state can be achieved by the continued practice of doing everything with our thought resting all the while on the real point, which forms the very basis of existence. This pointed attention up to the real may be taken as the essence of prayer. So this pointed attention up to the real may be taken as the essence of prayer. This is the starting point, and the removing of superfluities is the first step towards it. So I think what you mentioned, sir, I think this paragraph is what...
No, that is what I wanted people to concentrate while meditating, because the faint reflection also goes away. If you observe it, it will be your own experience. It will be very nice, interesting, actually. It's a... it is possible in the experience of everybody, because that is the scientific fact. If you hold that idea of prayer in your conscious mind, first it will be there, then it will start fading actually, and a mere impression remains of that, and then that also fades away, and like that, it becomes subtler and subtler. At any time you can pray. That's what we tried to do just before starting. He says you develop, whenever you feel inclined, you can pray, or you create a, inclination to pray whenever you feel like. So that is how you have to train yourself. Meditation is completely training only.
So, what does he mean by essence?
Essence, like suppose I say the essence of all the periodic table elements, all the 92, whatever is made up of electromagnetic waves which condense to neutrons, protons, and electrons. The essence is that's subtle particle, quantum particle, which becomes grosser and then becomes all these periodic table elements and all that. So in the same way, our mind, when it is freed from the grosser thoughts like this notions that this body belongs to me, or I'm a male or a female, I'm an Indian or a Pakistani, all these notions, if they are gone, then the mind will be stripped off of all these grosser accumulations, and then it'll assume its original nature, which you can call it as an essence. Like suppose you find a like that. So that essence is very similar to God actually. Then you realize that your true essential nature is spiritual, and then everything is, there is no thought in your mind which will make you break up this essential unity into subject and object duality. Now I am talking to Subodh. Abhi damak mein idea ki you are a different person, I am a different person. This idea of duality, that I am a person talking and you are a person listening, that is called duality. And duality is because of the grossness of the functioning of the mind and language. But basically, the truth is, if you probe deeper into it, there's only an essence which is present in me and in you, and in between the space between you and me. And that essence is grasped in meditation. And then suddenly a revelation or epiphany comes onto you, and then you feel liberated from all suffering, because all suffering is due to this this feeling of duality, this feeling that you are separate from you feeling that you are just restricted to the boundary of your skin, and everything outside is separate from you, including all the world and all the people residing in this world. So that feeling goes, and you come to the essence, and you realize that the essence in you is the same essence in the air and in all the particles, in all the people, in all the animals, and even all the insects. It is the same essence everywhere. You find God present everywhere. So that is the when the mind is stripped off of all its grossness, it becomes aware of its own essence actually. So spirituality is basically refinement of the individual soul to realize its subtle essence, which is as similar to the Kshob, or before the whole world came into existence, the energy which was existing in its subtler state. There's no difference between you and that actually. So that understanding unfolds within you if you do meditation correctly. So essence means when you're stripped off of all this grossness, when you penetrate to the basic structure of the reality itself, then you find God is present everywhere. So there is no differentiation between subject and object. There is no duality. And there is no good and bad, and there is no light and darkness. There is no existence and non-existence. Everything is one. But this will become your personal experience if you meditate. Otherwise, it's a concept in your mind. Concept does not give you freedom. By reading books, by talking, listening to talks, it will not give you true freedom from suffering. Unless the Guru takes you out of that quagmire, it is not possible to feel your own essence actually. Okay, we'll go ahead unless you want further clarification.
No, I think all good.
People,
Present state of mind, all of us cannot feel the essence because it is too gross. So a lot of cleaning has to be done. When your mind behaves in harmony with the divinity which is present everywhere, then the purity will come. When the purity comes, then only you can feel your essence. Otherwise, you cannot feel your essence if grossness is there. So the system, that's why spends a lot of effort in cleaning. That's why more importance is given by the master to individual cleaning. That is very important. And in cleaning, what you do, you use your original thought power. Original thought is the same purity of thought which has created the whole world. So that original thought is present in you in the form of your human will actually. And with that will, you try to clean off your impurities. Impurities means the likings and dislikes which you have collected in your existence so far. So you burn them and then throw them out in the form of smoke from your backside. And in its place, the grace of the master enters into your system. And once in that sense, you purify yourself, then you'll start, your mind starts becoming aware of the divine essence in you. And here the trainer also helps you in cleaning actually. So better if you take an individual physical presence, because distance sittings and all will not help. Even Babuji also used to insist that you have to come to me physically and all that. So you, instead of in absentia sitting, you go to the trainer, sit before him, take time from him. He will do the cleaning and do whatever necessary to see that your mind is develops the capacity to feel that essence.
Like you said, trainer will do the cleaning, right?
Yeah. He will use his willpower to clean your mind from these impressions which you have collected. The impressions form because of the feeling of doership. The idea that you are a self inside. There is somebody like a person driving a car. The common folk psychology understanding is that there is a person inside me who is called the individual person, who is sitting in a theater, and he'll be seeing a cinema, the characters moving on the screen. In the same way, there's a person sitting inside me who is seeing all these thoughts and feelings which are, appearing on the screen of my consciousness screen, the phenomena which are happening, some tastes, some senses, some thoughts, some memories, all those things are watched by an individual person. So which is a myth actually. There is no such individual person inside you. There is only consciousness which is universally present in everybody. But mind, due to some terrible mistake, starts believing that there is an individual person which is separate from the God actually. So that is the problem actually. So when a person is pretty much, majority of the human beings are under that delusion, the thinking that there's a homunculus sitting under you. Under that influence, whatever thought and action you do, that will form an impurity which will prevent you from knowing your true essence. So the trainer tries to remove these complexities in the form of network which is inside you, so that your mind starts getting a glimpse of the divine, which is your true nature actually. So the ego is actually a mythical structure which has acquired, powerful feeling of reality within us. Okay.
So people may wonder why I have called it as the beginning. It is, in fact, a state of consciousness. Though consciousness is present at every step, yet this one is the higher and superior. I do not take up the subsequent states, for it would be very difficult to grasp them. And the final phase cannot even be conceived of in any way. Oneness prevails there in full swing. Prayer comes before this state is entered into. These three stages, or two and a half, as one might say, because after that awareness is lost, may, for the sake of understanding, be taken as the entire space from the beginning to the end. The intermediate state is also implied in it. This, for which I have termed as the beginning, is in fact the real abode. Perhaps there may be some difficulty in accepting it as the beginning or the first stage of prayer. The idea is analogous with that of child who starts learning the alphabet with a view to secure higher approaches, so that subsequently he may start tackling higher problems and deeper thoughts. That means the ideal was before him, though at the time he was entangled only in the structure of the words and letters. This preliminary stage may appear to be superfluity in comparison with its final phase. This first state exists in every man who starts prayer, but if the final point is in view, it will influence the grosser thing too. And by the by, he will attain a state where the main point alone will be before him, and he will have his stay on it. When this preliminary state is attained, one must then try to get it expanded. Expanding does not mean swelling it up like a balloon, but to develop it by introducing into it the real substance or power. When it develops to the extent that grossness begins to be converted into lightness, almost up to the point of extinction, then he must understand that he has entered the sphere where only the faint ghost of the idea of the subtle existence of something remains. The current flowing down from the origin manifested themselves in diverse ways. They had descended not without purpose. They were, in fact, powers which began to act in numerous ways, producing the required results. All these powers had emerged from the origin and began to manifest their actions. Take the case of a baby. At the time of birth, he could not even move about. Subsequently, he began to sit, stand, talk, walk, and run. That is to say, the capacities lay dormant in him, which now began to develop into action, till he attained blooming youth and acquired the full active vigor of a man. The elements contained in the composition of the baby developed in various forms, though the origin of all these was the same tiny drop. Wheels after wheels began to set round, which were caused by the effect of the mother's habits, the father's thoughts, the type of training, and all external influences which began to display their respective actions. All these influences had a touch of materiality. The multiplicity of actions made him uncognizant of all the various changes which he had undergone during his march towards grossness. Now, he is so intensely engrossed in it that it defies all efforts to get out of that state of complete grossness. Later on, it took another turn. He came in touch with the world around and was influenced by the dealings and associations of others. The environment caused its own effect. Desires began to creep in and attract his attention. His entire existence being colored, thus he assumed it changed form and began to attract material for the same. What was he, and what has he now quite out of view? Not only this, but the elements thus introduced went on growing stronger by the effect of his own thoughts. Consequently, their action grew still more powerful and intensified, with the result that they began to draw in greater power from the forces of nature. Just as tiny spring composed of a few drops of water trickling down from a mountain crevice flows down in the form of a petty rivulet and goes on swelling by the additional supply of water from the melting snow or from tributary stream till it develops into a huge sea of water. So does a baby when the things introduced into him at the primary stage have attained full development, attain maturity. The origin of the ripples present in the water is nothing but the result of karma's actions, which had helped him during the course to acquire its final form. So these are the waves which are lastly considered to be the waves of joy, often misinterpreted as Anandam. In a man's life, this phase comes during the period of youth when he is sufficiently coated with contaminations. When a man comes into this form, which is the result of all the actions his state is similar to that of the ocean. An important point in this connection is that a thing, when observed continuously, begins to fade away from sight, and only its reflection remains, which to finally disappear. The reason is that matter possesses the capacity of seeing matter alone. The capacity to see beyond lies only in the finer power which is beyond it. This goes on further in the same way till the very power of seeing becomes extinct. But still something remains even beyond it, which comes up in the form of consciousness. Further on, this too becomes extinct, and even the feeling of existence fades away. That which follows then is the state of negation, the very reality itself. In fact, it is very difficult to understand it unless one actually reaches the point. Nay, rather, he is submerged in that state. But even this negation is something existent, for if it is not, why do we call it so? Proceed on still further. The currents which descended from the origin began to grow thicker and grosser. Why? It is very difficult point to explain. When a man jumps down from a great height, he becomes almost half dead during the course of the fall. The reason is generally attributed to the gravitation of the earth. But I may say that the awareness of the downward fall diverts the heat of thought downwards, and it begins to get out of him by the force of the push. The same is the case with the downward currents. Solidity implies grossness, and it has no life. Now the divine currents, being without life, may not be generally appealing. But I may say that though all minerals, vegetables, and animals have come down from the divine, yet all of them are not said to be possessing life. But if they do at all, it must be a form of dormant life. The same is the case with the divine currents. But man, associating them with his own karmas, begins to get engrossed in them. Since we have accepted prayer as essential, it now becomes imperative to understand how it should be conducted. I consider the following short prayer to be essential for an abhyasi. Though there may be other forms too, I prefer this short one. O Master, Thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God and power to bring us up to that stage. When the world emerged into the present form, the central point was already rooted deep in all the beings. This being a part of the Supreme, it turns our attention towards the source. In prayer, we try to reach up to the central point. This is, however, possible only when we create a similar state within. This requires practice. It can be attained by resigning ourselves to the divine will, which is absolutely simple and tranquil. Apparently, it seems to be very difficult, though in fact it is not so. It is not difficult for those who aspire for it. When a man creates himself a strong craving for the absolute, he is indeed in a state of prayer, and it is for everyone to strive for it. Whenever a man enters into that state, even for a moment, his prayer is granted, but it requires continued practice to accomplish it.
We'll meet next Sunday if there's no other, nothing else to